Okay, today's webinar from the Open Group, which is likely to be the last of 2014, so you're all most welcome. Today is being brought to us by Biz Design, which you all know is a very active member of the Open Group, and our speakers are Remco Bloom and Medina Alday. Before I hand over to our speakers, I'd just like to go over a few housekeeping issues to keep the event moving forward smoothly. With regards to questions, we do encourage you to ask questions. These events are really good opportunities to do so, and the best way to submit a question is probably to use the QA text facility. So if you have a question you'd like Remco or Dina to answer at the end of the presentation, then please write your question into the QA facility and address it to all participants. That one gets to see all the questions that are being submitted. If you'd like to share a comment with a fellow attendee, then probably the best way to do that is to use the text chat facility. As I said, we'll try and answer as many questions at the end of today's presentation. This event is being fully recorded, so if for any reason you have to leave early, or if you experience any local technical difficulties, and I know sometimes we do have some audio issues around the world, then a full recording will be available of this event tomorrow, and anyone who's registered will get an email with the appropriate URL where they can access that recording. So, ready, can I ask you to start your presentation?
Yes, very much, Simon, and to the Open Group for having us again in one of these webinars. This subject is on effective strategy implementation, and what we will be presenting is an approach to align your strategy with the capabilities and the architecture, and also to make the step towards implementation, relating it to your project portfolio. So how do you align strategic planning with the implementation in your organization? And what we've noticed in recent research is that these are still really two different things, the planning of the strategy as well as the implementation of the strategy. And we will be presenting this approach to align the two a bit better. Hour only, so as Simon already mentioned, you can watch the full recording from as of tomorrow on the website. But if you're interested in the slides, you can download them from the website bizdesign.com, where through the download section you will find a hyperlink to get these slides in PDF. First, myself, I'm a senior enterprise architecture consultant at Biz Design. Trainings on enterprise architecture on TOEFL and Archimate, but more time I spent with customers doing enterprise architecture assignments and building up enterprise architecture capabilities. I'm presenting together with Adina. Adina, can you tell a bit about yourself?
Hello, everybody. I'm a research consultant at Biz Design, where I develop such methods and approaches as you will see today. And at the same time, I'm also a PhD student at the University of Twente, where at the moment I'm working on the same topic. At Design, I deal with the more practical aspects and with case studies at organizations and such. And at the university, I do mostly with the theoretical part.
So for this session, first of all, introduction on Biz Design. Many of you probably are familiar with who we are, what we do, so we will go through that quite fast. And we'll present key findings from research we did on strategic alignment. And some of the issues we have learned from in this research are taken research that Adina has done on improving the strategic alignment. And we'll present our approach in a product Biz Design architect. I'll finish up with lessons learned and next steps. So for you, after this session, you will have a better understanding of the main issues in strategy planning and strategy execution. We present an approach on relating strategy, capabilities, architecture, and your project portfolio. So at the end of this session, you will have this approach. Finally, we hope that you learn that a software-supported approach can help in improving these strategic alignment issues. So we come from a specific background in the Enschede, in the east of the Netherlands, where that started the company. We're doing research on business process management and business process design. Research, there was a software tool and a method created and to the market, which was 15 years ago, and are with over 125 people around the globe, helping organizations to build up architect practices, to make processes more lean, help them with starting up data management teams and CIO offices. About our personnel is working on the R&D and the further development of our tool suite. So what's in the market is that every organization is becoming a digital company. So data oriented. So production organizations are the digitization, both in their processes as well as the data supply chain supporting these processes, is becoming more and more important over time. Changes in companies as well as around companies, from the governments making it more important to be compliant and making sure you're compliant, as well as the market trends and the technology trends. So business information is also becoming a really success factor. So the faster, the better you are in transforming yourself, you will perform in the market. Finally, we see that customers have been spoiled thanks to companies like Amazon, Apple, and Google. Centralization of IT, research on the CEO as well as in the company to deliver the experiences that people are getting used to and customers expect it from you. And design is that we take up these challenges and take a based approach, strategy, where I have business models from, and we take those business models and take them as a starting point for your enterprise architecture. How do you organize yourself? And then we create, for instance, as well as architecture models, a perfect starting point for your more detailed design modeling, field of process, data, and systems design. But we empower organizations to independently carry out crucial change initiatives, standard-based solution. So these standards, largely by the open group, are an important aspect in our approach. In these standards, we aim to align strategy, design, and implementation. But reason to do such a thing? Why do it? So what actually is then the business need? So most customers want to improve their processes. Some to grow revenue, but typically that's not very relevant for public sector organizations. They are for cost reduction or for infrastructure rationalization or to become more flexible or more compliant. Always take those business as the starting point for your journey, even whether this is a strategic journey or an enterprise architecture journey. And we think it's very important. And that we apply are on strategic level, the strategy models that you are probably familiar with, but also the business model canvas. In the architecture, we support and endorse Archimate and TOGAF. And on field level, we support on standards like BPMN, UML, but also ERD and TDM, which is a standard for decision modeling around business rules. So upgraded product suite, architects, process managers, support managers, and risk managers throughout the organization with a best-class basic architecture. So you either implement this in a very large organization, but also in smaller organizations where you can start off really small. So now talking due to our support of the different standards, very easy to use, and we will demonstrate that at the end of the presentation. And it's very open, so it can integrate with your existing infrastructure. Some key findings from our strategy survey. We found that strategy development already is a challenge, but implementing a strategy is even a bigger challenge. Many organizations are willing to use tools. Even though it's about half of them really use some tools. So to use these tools is bigger than what is actually what we see that really is applied. The problems that are experienced are conflicting priorities, due to the legacy that exists in organizations, and that is really the issue is the communication of the strategy. Let's do that a bit deeper. What is strategy? We see that strategies are defined at the top of the organization, so it's a plan, a direction, of course, but it doesn't have to be like that per se. It can also be more emerging strategies. It has to become a plan. So stuff emerges, but once it becomes part of the real plan of the organization, we consider it to be a strategy. The strategic alignment we consider to be the fit between intended market position and the IT actually inside your organization that makes it possible to get this market position. And the question we ask in this survey, or which is the basis for the survey, is why do organizations often fail at developing and implementing their strategies? And how come they fail in reaching this strategic alignment? The survey, thanks to Open Group, was to once in Western Europe, also in Northern Europe and North America, was just population of respondents. Also, Association of Enterprise Architects, an important partner in people out the survey. And then the Dutch Architecture Federation. We attendees, or most respondents, working for large organizations. So about 75% works in companies with 500 plus. The very small organizations we larger to be collectors in the field of enterprise architecture. So, do you actually experience problems during the development phase and the implementation phase? And we said yes to one of those questions. We made deep dive into what were the reasons for having these problems. Yeah, maybe this is not a big surprise for you, at least it was not for me, that many experience problems. About half experienced problems during the development strategy. 75% that experience problems during implementation. So half experience problems during both the development as well as the implementation of a strategy. Maybe these strategies are really too broad, or what could be a reason? Why is this not working? So strategy is developed, crucial for how a strategy is implemented. So problems during the development, there are always problems during implementation. The other round is not the case, but this is something that really can state on the basis of this survey. Factor in success seems to be who is involved. We see typically staff organizations like finance, marketing, sales are involved during the development of strategy. Organizational actors like program and project management as well as IT are involved during the implementation phase. So those during the development of architecture experience less problems. And we see that the orientation of the problems is in the implementation phase. And there to be a big gap between those that are only involved in the development and that are only involved during implementation. So it's not a big surprise to you that it is a recommendation to all key implementation players already in development of your strategy. We took a look at how tools and techniques are used to design a strategy. And 5% of organizations often use strategy techniques. And not 52% 62% do not often or never use strategy techniques. And of the people is or maybe to the usage of strategy tools. So there's strong willingness to use these kind of tools. We say that tools are strategy modeling tools, so that you can take aspects of your strategy and analyze them and relate them to implementation aspects. So percent of people is willing to use these kind of tools. Tools are popular. Yeah, the analysis, I would say. So about 1% of the versus analysis. 6% uses the business case. Of the business model canvas, which is by about 1/3 of the respondents. The more like value chain and the forces, still only 20%, so 1/5. And then down really fast. The business case are most often used, and other techniques are not used as often. The question that arises, is this sufficient to develop and manage strategic change in doing today? I didn't ask the people what their answer is, but we think that there is room for improvement and an approach that aligns some of these different techniques, that selecting these techniques, but also that helps you to read the results coming out of this technique to your enterprise architecture can make a change. Then we ask, what are the most significant problems in the process? And more than 50% state conflicting priorities the biggest issue for them. So, which are attending in the strategy development phase have theories or are unclear about what is the most important aspect that's coming out of the strategy. Clear shared beliefs, which was the top one. On the strategic alignment indicators, also the development and implementations are separate processes, as well as the majority of the people is not represented during development. So number 2 and point number 4 are strategic alignment indicators. Organizational capabilities, which is the third point, that's about having a lean organization. So current IK is not supporting the new strategy. So the strategy is for what you actually can reach with what you have today. The last 6 points are oriented on communication. So responsibilities to reach target goals, understanding of expected actions of employees. It's all about translating and communicating this, what is expected from people. And also in that field, there's a lot to improve. Absolute killers of strategic alignment to be the lack of direct analysis and understanding about the strategy in general. This come out of our research as the absolute killers of strategic alignment. So the research we've done, thanks to the Open Group and the Association of Enterprise Architects, results are not very surprisingly, but others are, and really set us as R&D agenda. And the team, there's a working on strategy development as well as on capability-based planning, and present an approach that we came up with in the past year. Adina, you take us in this journey.
Yes. Research that you saw with the survey was done by one of the students that I had at the university. And yeah, basically from that it ended up that also results of strategy planning are basically too high level to be implemented directly, with no surprise, since you talk in terms of goals and strategies, and then you talk in terms of processes and applications. So there is a big gap in between those two to implement it directly with enterprise architecture. Another key element that was for the method for strategic alignment was the fact that enterprise since this is revolved around enterprise architecture, need to be able to communicate with management in the same language. So if when management says improve revenues, you don't really know what impact that has on the architecture of an organization, not directly in any case. And when enterprise architects talk about processes and applications, that's something maybe that management is not per se interested in, or maybe even, I would say maybe even understands, but would not be bothered with specific processes or applications. The idea with the method that I'm suggesting is that capability-based planning is a good solution for at least the communication issue to improve strategic alignment. The image that you can see there has basically the 4 big domains that I'm covering. The first is strategic planning, which was the main focus of my master's thesis and the beginning of my PhD. And it's basically to develop a more formal way of looking at strategy by the use of strategy models, which you've seen in the survey organizations are actually using. The other 2 parts, enterprise architecture and portfolio management, which you're a bit more familiar with, I guess, if you're a bit more familiar with OF and such, and capability-based planning in the middle. It's not, this must suggest a hierarchy that planning comes first, enterprise architecture second, and such. This is just an image that suggests how connections can be made between the 4 domains. And explain a scenario in the following few slides, in which, I would say it's a common scenario for organizations that use enterprise architecture and a formal way of explaining their strategy. This is the scenario that I talked about. As basically, for each of the 4 domains, some very generic steps or actions, like you might want to say. This is a scenario in which strategy planning is done at the beginning phase. So management sets a direction for their organization. And after that, starts thinking in terms of capabilities, like what is our organization able to do, and this kind of strategy. Therefore, from there on, thinking in terms of enterprise architecture, basically how we're doing things with this applications, people and such. This is an example. So this is only one of the scenarios that it can be used in. Other ways can be used as well. You can, if you have sort of capability-based planning already implemented in your organization, and you have a capability map, for example, you can use that capability map to steer some of your directions, of your decisions in your organization, and find strategies based on that. This is the current meta model that we are using for this in terms of Archimate, if you are familiar with Archimate. And it's the standard goal concept. Environment that realizes it. New aspects of it are the metric, which is a specialization of driver, and the capability and capability increment. As I said, it's basically an ability that an organization has at a specific point in time. And a capability increment is basically a specific version of that capability. So capability increment 1 would be, you can put it as the current version of the capability. And capability increment 2 is the future version, so what you want to achieve. The other capability increment is that you decompose your capabilities in small steps that do, so you don't have one big transformation at a time. You choose smaller steps to transform it, from capability increment 1 to 2, 3, 4, 10, 20, it doesn't matter, depending on what your what you are. Strategy planning. It's basically the process in which you define a strategy, a direction, a plan, where organization is supposed to be heading in the near future. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, like the SWOT analysis suggests. You have the strategies, you choose to pursue a specific one, have a high-level course of action that you determine. So basically, strategy planning is about determining a direction, a high-level course of action, based on formal decision-making, because it's about planning. So it's a bit formal. It's not. You need some sort of documentation, some sort of support about it. It's not. It happened ad hoc, basically. But the strategy planning activities or steps, as you would like to call them like that, is the generic step in which you define a mission, a vision, and with an environmental analysis to determine those strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This is a step when you consider the capabilities and the resources of the organization as your source for strengths and weaknesses. Formulation. You formulate, of course, strategies. You formulate your business model. Implementation, where you set objectives, KPIs, which are metrics or measurements, which you want to apply to those objectives, and initiatives that help you realize those specific objectives. And one is critical success factors, like what is needed for the objective and therefore this strategy to be successful. These are typical results of these 3 steps of strategic planning that you might find. The business model canvas is one of the models that can be used for strategy planning to define your business model and to do stress testing and give you a better insight on what your organization is able to do. And Biz Design has support with architects for this model canvas. Will you be showing it as well?
I will give an example of it later on.
Yeah, so Remco will provide an example later on with the actual tool. How would you model-based strategy planning with architects, for example, or with Archimate in this case? You have your vision. In this case, will be a case of pharmaceutical organization. It's based on a real case study, but it is anonymized. They have a vision to become the leading provider of pharmaceutical services in the world. Do that by offering the most innovative pharmaceutical services with a quick and reliable solution. These are 2 typical things that you find in the vision and mission statement of an organization. They have the strategy, leaders in pharmaceutical products, but not enough for them to achieve their mission and vision. Therefore, they developed a second strategy. They want to excel at operations. To do this, they have the objective to optimize price-quality ratio. And they further expand on this into 2 parts. They want to maximize customer value and minimize operational costs. And to these kind of objectives, basically, they assign a KPI. So how do they want to measure these objectives? By operational performance, for example, for minimizing operational costs. From these, they have critical success factors. What is vital for this strategy to be successful? So, for example, for minimizing operational costs, they need to consolidate applications, reduce the number of product offerings, and personalize asset portfolio management. This, I would suggest, is a typical way to model strategy with the use of Archimate. This is that you need to have some sort of hierarchy that represents the higher vision, mission, strategy, and objective. And you can also model all of these with goal concept, as you can see. And you can use KPIs. You can also model KPIs with the metric concept, which is one of the new proposed concepts from the innovation configuration, which Michael will talk a bit more about and make a presentation later on. And the critical success factors is what is required for that to be successful can be modeled with the requirement concept of Archimate. Yeah, with strategy planning, a next step would be capability-based planning, which is focusing on planning, engineering, and delivering of strategic business capabilities. And how you have an ability, it helps you have an insight into the abilities of an organization, motivation to implementation, so the strategy to, in this case, the enterprise architecture. You can identify under or overperforming abilities, even capabilities. You can plan increments over time, those capability increments that I talked to you from the beginning, and also allocate resources to those capability increments. why capability-based planning is an interesting way to do this is because you can help manage change in a modular way, in terms that managers and architects can understand, with focus on business value. In a modular way, because a capability of architecture is an architecture that realizes it. So it is a module that changes. So always know that if you want to change a specific capability, you need to look at that module, at that capability inventory, as we refer to it. And both managers and architects can understand it, because managers are used to talking in terms of capabilities, and they know what capabilities are, but there's direct translation from the capabilities to the architecture. And architects can understand what a capability is. That is basically what the organization is able to do, and figure out what processes and applications and people and servers and networks and such can help realize that specific capability. Thus, it's a very good communicator in between managers and architects to talk in very simple terms that they can both understand what it means to them. They are focused on gaining business value, so a specific capability is designed for achieving a specific business value, which is what managers are also looking at, making change to the business value. The most common activities, steps for capability-based planning are mapping, analyzing, and planning. And you usually make a capability map. You define which capabilities are strategic, so which ones help a specific strategy be realized. And you define a capability inventory, like I've discussed, which is basically which elements of your architecture help realize that specific capability. You analyze capabilities by adding metrics to them and making a specific analysis, which I'll show to you later. Plan them with increments, which means small changes over time, the versions of capabilities in time. And you can put this on a roadmap so it's easily visible how it's scheduled in the future. This is an example of a capability map, that same organization that we had before. And we have governance capabilities, strategic management capabilities and such, and some capabilities, as you can see. New capabilities is like on business functions, like an art capability or sales capability or marketing capability, but you can also do horizontal capabilities in that sense. So for governance, risk and compliance management is an example of a horizontal capability. So therefore, some people might argue that capabilities overlap with business functions. Here, that they don't. From this perspective, it's also because capabilities can have an architecture. They're not part of your architecture. You can define capabilities how you want. It doesn't have to be based on business functions. And capability is basically a gathering of aspects of the organization. Based also on the previous example, in which we went down to requirements, and this way you can link capabilities to their motivation. You need, for example, the governance, risk and compliance capability. You need the asset management, product management, and sales and marketing management capabilities to be improved in order to optimize price-quality ratio in the end. So therefore, the version of those capabilities, you can consider capability increment 1, and the version that will help realize that new strategy that you have is capability increment 2 in this example. Just another visualization of the way capabilities are linked to strategy. You can clearly see what capabilities are needed all for the strategy that the organization already has, which is for product leadership, and also for the new one for operational excellence. You can clearly see here with a color view which capabilities contribute to realizing those strategies. You can assign metrics, so KPIs, to specific capabilities, and you can use as a starting point the KPIs that you get from the strategy development phase, like in the case operational performance, and make specific metrics for each capability, like regulatory compliance, adaptability to environment, and information consistency. If you select at least 3 of these metrics, you can do a spider chart in which you can plot basically the current level of ability. So the capability increment 1, as you can see, for adaptability to environment, it's medium at the moment, but you wanted it with capability increment 2 to be high. So that's your goal. You want to get it from medium to high. If you do this for at least 3 metrics per capability, you get a spider chart, so you can make it visual from starting point to your goal, basically. And the blue is the current situation, and the pink purple is the desired situation for that capability within those metrics. This over to Remco, since he is the local specialist on enterprise architecture, discuss a bit about it.
Yeah, we think that many of you are enterprise architects, so you're familiar with why and what and how of enterprise architecture. For those who are not that familiar with it, I would like to underline that we think that an enterprise architecture approach should consist at least process, so a step-by-step way of working in designing and developing and creating your architecture in the organization, and they need a language to express your enterprise architecture. There's models, and where two processes and language meet is in the world of viewpoints, where you make relevant points for the different stakeholders in your organization. All be then supported by a repository and might be inserted or related to reference models. For the side of things, we see our customers like to use TOGAF, Group Architecture Framework. Once in this method is the ADM, the Architecture Development Method, which really is this step-by-step way of working. Many customers select Archimate, open standard modeling language for the Open Group, to model their products and services architecture, their business architecture, information architecture, as well as their applications, data, and technology architecture. Any of these two methods really gives you a complete set for your architecture approach. And TOGAF approach, this ADM way of working, also the inspiration for the way your enterprise architecture is. Isn't that right, Adina?
Yes. See here, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, but this is the more simplified version of the ADM. And with 4 main phases, 4 main steps. Line of context, then you plan to do the delivery, and then the planning and the governance. The context, you basically think of a vision of capabilities and of the business value that will be delivered by the change and organization. The delivery part, that's basically where you design your baseline and target architectures, make a gap analysis. And the point is where you have the roadmaps and the implementation and migration plan. And the last one is where you do the implementation, governance, and change management. Then talking about capability inventory. So the way a capability is treated from an enterprise architecture point of view. So the management capability in this case has a specific set of architecture that help realize it, and name this a capability inventory. There are the billing in New York, London, and Amsterdam, the process of customer billing in New York, London, and Amsterdam, and the store billing, express invoice, and wave invoice billing. Those are all elements that are required to realize this capability in the situation of this organization. You have also roles and actors. You can have servers, networks, all the elements of the Archimate core. For those of you that here you can see an idea. You have all those elements in the inventory that I talked about. Once to make the change, you want to basically consolidate a bit the services, the processes, and the applications of the organization. And the desired situations, the customer management increment 2 for the capability, which you see looks slightly different. That doesn't have separate build services, separate processes, and separate applications for it. The concept that is used and defined for the first increment as capability inventory is actually the building block, which you can see for the second increment, which is a concept that we propose is needed in order to state which elements of an architecture are needed. So different than the grouping, which is basically only visual, this really has a meaning saying that all those elements are required for something, and this for realizing a capability increment. Here how you can see basically the old way of working, so this is the gap analysis, just between the current state, which you can see in orange, and the future desired state, which you can see in yellow. Here's how you can relate the capabilities to programs, basically. So you have those capability increments. You can specific plateaus for them, which are specific are snapshots, the desired of your organization, and you can relate programs and projects and packages as they are known in architecture to those specific things. So you have now the relation between programs and projects to capabilities and capability increments. Step to portfolio management, which basically helps you group things of the same type. If you thought enterprise portfolio management and not specifically about project or application portfolio management, you can group things of the same type based on some sort of criteria. Manage them as a whole. Helps provide an enterprise-wide overview. This helps as a support for analysis and comparisons, and therefore you can make well-known decisions at levels. Enterprise portfolio management can help you manage on business value and not on costs, which is aligned to what capabilities are also doing, because they're focused on business value and not on the costs. Some generic activities of portfolio management, basically an identification step in which you find a motivation for grouping these, so these criteria that I talked about. You make categories of projects. This is for project portfolio management, so not generic enterprise portfolio management. A select step, you think about stakeholder concerns, so what would put priority on and such to help you create portfolios. You evaluate projects, you select projects, and you make portfolios which need to be balanced on cost, risk, and benefits and such. The part where you create a roadmap of how these projects are going to be implemented over time, and you plan the allocation of the resources for each of these projects and portfolios. And a step in which you have the metrics and you have analytics and evaluations, basically for all which will help you evaluate these portfolios and how well they're going, and also the individual projects. Next of architect, you have, as it was before, the same goal, and you have a requirement, and you have capability increments with their respective plateaus and programs, and each of these programs has a specific number of projects, or how they're called in Archimate, work packages, and then make a portfolio based on this. And as you see, the last picture on the right is how it's done in Architect, the tool of this design. You have a description of each portfolio, so you can say what it means and such. You can just fill it in. You have the owner, so the person that's responsible for managing that portfolio. You have the goal, which is basically what that portfolio is trying to achieve, to realize within the organization. So that's what the portfolio actually contains. So in this case, the application rationalization program is respective projects. So metrics that can be assigned to that portfolio, and dashboards that you can make based on those metrics. This is how you can color view to see on the map, which is a roadmap. You can specific programs, how they contribute to realizing each capability. So the ones in yellow help realize capability 1, and in orange help realize capability 2. So this is another way of visualizing the relation between programs and projects and capabilities. Here are some of the analysis you can make: a time analysis, risk analysis, a cost analysis. And last picture is basically how you can set up these kind of analysis with the Architect tool.
The tool. I'm going to show you a bit of how this approach is implemented in BizDesign Architect, which is our product for enterprise architecture, strategy modeling, also BPMN is implemented, and Business Model Canvas. And I'd like to go through it with you. First, opening the tools, our drawing. You really rapidly draw applications, and you can access what they actually are doing, services that are realized by these applications. So this is what you use when you are in a workshop, for instance, very rapidly drawing. Another way of populating your repository might be that you want to a set of processes they have on a list and say, oh, these processes and their documentation, I would like to import that in my repository without typing, without or just copying the information. This also works for stuff that is in Excel or in other tools. Once it is XML based, we can do that. Relate elements and say, I would like to relate my business processes to my application services. Relation, and the tool then helps you with setting the right relation. In this case, we'd like to say that it is used by, and 1 and 2 are both used by this service. Then again, just delete stuff because everything is in the repository, and this was just a view. I see everything that is related to this element, show it on my, and it generates a view of this element. And with this very flexible viewing mechanisms, you can generate views out of the repository. It's Archimate compliant as well as TOGAF certified. We can also express the TOGAF ADM views, provide you with all predefined views out of the box. So if you TOGAF ADM cycle, all views are predefined for you. Now into the example of another example, which is the ABC organization in financial services. It does a lot of asset management. Follow the same route as Adina was explaining. We'd like to understand a bit more about their strategy, their business model. Here you see that ABC Asset Management, this is their business model canvas. Currently have a profitability of $5.5 million and a market share of 30%. Really well because profits are declining, or market shares and profits are declining. So let's look at 2018. In 2018, added a new service, the ABC High Revenue Mutual Fund. And lifesaver for them because market share going up as well as their profitability. What the differences are between different states. The color, where the yellow is part of the baseline and the orange stuff is part of the target only. So we said AC Revenue Mutual Fund is added, as well as a new stream, some new channels. And of course, they need to do something for it, so also new key resources. This organization has a federated structure, but they have a headquarters in Seattle, as well as offices in Amsterdam, in Singapore, and throughout the globe. And if you want them, you can dive in it a bit deeper. How their, in this case, Dutch organization is, how it's looking, and also how it is performing. So you see, in this case, their hire and fire retire costs. Also, elements that you put on a dashboard, you can show here. One of this presentation is explaining how goals and capabilities are related. So modeled strategic drivers, goals, and strategic capabilities. So for the mutual fund management, when they add a fund, that fund element is really important. And they have related some programs to it. So this is an overview for management. interested in adjustment, we can generate a view for just this element. Shows related to this element. And it's that it is supporting this increased product range goal, in realizing the environment. There are metrics related to it, as well as products, the ABC High Revenue Mutual Fund. Oh, that's what we saw earlier. And increments, fund management baseline increment, as well as the target increment. Drill down throughout the different areas in the model. Capability increment, we can also show how increments are moving, how these capabilities are moving from a diversified replication coordination towards more unification, because that's our selected operating model from the book Enterprise Architecture as a Strategy, in which this approach to enterprise architecture is presented. Per increment, we can present details, and given the different edges of these increments, we show how they perform. So, blue, we see the target, and in red, the baseline. So, for the APM, the asset portfolio management, we are investing in it. The target increment, the level of integration is growing a lot. So one of the aspects that one of the reasons that we are actually doing this. Business views, we then can show the different metrics on top of them. So per capability and per capability, we define what metrics is relevant to show how they are performing. In the overview, back to the overview, dive deeper into the APM, and we can show all the spider charts, but now we focus on APM. And the spider chart, what we are aiming for, but also how we are moving from a baseline increment to the target increment, and some projects that are supporting this. We management, we integrate asset management in the rest of our landscape. We do some HR project here. What it costs us? A lot, especially project number 4. The integrate step is a costly step. We look to that deeper, and we see that is part of integrated asset management program, and so can go up all the way and see that there's an increment. And why are we doing it? We're doing it to increase product range and to provide integrated services. And reason to integrate all of this, to show you we have a strategy, therefore going to do stuff, and also for the people that actually are supposed to do this stuff, decisions, what we should do first, you can also trace back to higher level goals. Fine, drill all the way down, and you can say, okay, in my application landscape, because with asset management we are starting off, we're integrating a new application in our landscape. We want a time analysis. So also show, well, in time, as from the perspective of tolerate, invest, migrate, and eliminate, how our portfolio of applications is moving through the time. So we see that these elements we have in 2014 and how they are divided over the different elements in business value and technical value. This a few examples of what you can do from strategy to capabilities and down project portfolio into your technology and application roadmap. All can be presented on in this portal, where you also show these different views, different elements in a portal where people can click on and that you can search through to communicate. Because also one of the elements for strategy implementation was bad communication, and this type of portals presenting relevant information to different stakeholders can be able to improve that. Some lessons learned. First of all, formalizing strategy, so not the strategy per se, but elements out of this strategy, and forming that really helps route towards implementation, because you're formalizing it and you have a starting ground. So if you are doing both strategy development as well as strategy implementation, really is crucial. It is usual for architects to be divided in strategic discussions, but it can be crucial for the success of a strategy towards implementation process. So I suggest you either get invited or you follow the indirect routes, that you try to influence the people that are part of the strategic discussions. Capability-based planning helps in communication. We start simple. So if you try to make a full capability map of a defense organization, that might be too heavy as a starting point. So you start off with a smaller set to familiarize yourself and your environment with the application of capability-based planning. That is a success factor. We have to experiment with the different ways that you can implement the strategy. So different capabilities as well as different capability increment routes can reach the same goal. So if you are working with scenarios, strategists like that, and they like to make selections and like to see what happens when you are applying different scenarios. Architecture with your portfolio shows you the value of your enterprise architecture. So modeling your business, data, applications, and technology itself gives you insights and you can do analysis. But real value is when you are making investment decisions and you are supporting projects with the architectural insights. Seeing your EA approach with your portfolio really helps in showing the value of it. But finally, we also learned that bad strategy still leads to bad results. So, yeah, the approach is helpful, but if you make the wrong decisions, you still end up with a bad strategy and a bad result. What can you do? You can download a trial version of our tool. This is supporting TOGAF and Archimate. The stuff you saw today really is still very innovative, as this is part of PhD research that is done currently. If you send it to our inside sales department, they can help you with getting a license of this innovation release, in which portfolio management and capability-based planning is also implemented. I suggest that you can start analyzing your organization strategy, and that you can derive goals and align these with your architecture principles. That really can make a difference, and architectural principles more accepted. You could also start creating a draft capability. You might want to invest in getting involved in strategic planning. You could strategy planning by presenting capability gaps, showing a sort of before-after type views or heat maps. You're designing target architectures for some of your capabilities, creating these capability inventories. It could be a good step forward to get involved more in the project portfolio process. Then here, we suggest that capability maps really could become part of the EA repository, and that you start using these capabilities in communication and decision making. You see that real successful EA teams are able to align the decisions made in their enterprise architecture with the decisions made in the portfolio. So we see that these architecture board and portfolio board starts to come closer and closer, and in some cases even are the same. Thanks for listening to this presentation on strategic alignment with the usage of enterprise architecture and capability-based planning. Refer to our website, where you can download this slide deck, some white papers on business models, EA, and portfolio management. Our white paper on capability-based planning is likely to be released early next year, maybe after Christmas, but probably is going to be January.
Early next year.
Early next year, Adina says. A trial version, some quick reference booklets, and also our blog with the different subjects that we covered today. So thanks very much. I hope you enjoyed it and that you learned some of it. And we hope to see you at one of the next webinars with the Open Group.
Remco, and thank you, Adina. A really interesting presentation there. We do have a few questions on the Q&A, which I'll go through. I'll start with this first one from Karthik, asking, what are your thoughts on this model with respect to lean startup and agile methodologies?
That is a very good question. We typically see that enterprise architecture is applied in large information-intensive organizations. So global organizations, financial services, and more so in production and pharma. But the insights from the lean startup are oriented on startups. And for customers, we see that they are, as large organizations, start to get some interest in these lean startup concepts as well. I have two approaches on it. One is that you go from populating your repository with building blocks, making it faster to come up with a minimal viable product, for instance, and to be able to faster scale up when you have a better understanding of what the customer wants. These lean startup approaches. Another, and that is what I see happen a lot, is that these lean startup initiatives in larger organizations are doing their own thing. Greenfield, outside the fences of the organization. And I think that is good and that is wise, because that is giving them speed and attraction in the market, more orientation outside world than inside world. Challenge them to integrate the outcomes of it. So stuff like business model canvas, capability-based planning really applies for also smaller organizations and startups, where more heavy approaches to enterprise architecture like an Archimate are typically more useful in larger and more complex organizations.
Thank you, Remco. Ellen, how is a capability contributing towards meeting the strategy?
Like you say, we draw relations between goals and capabilities, and she's asking if all capabilities contribute as much to the different strategies. Is it something you can answer, Adina?
Yeah, I would say not all capabilities contribute the same. You have to see which ones are contributing to get an idea of where the changes need to happen. It's also part later on with projects and such that you determine the value of each project and each portfolio and such. We will estimate the value of each capability, so you cannot really say this capability contributes 20%, because that's just an estimate. It's more gut feeling. You need to work with and capabilities are still quite high levels. You cannot really assign a particular number to a capability. You can numbers to elements that create the capability, such as applications and such, and therefore make it abstracted to the level of a capability. But capability itself, you make estimates, but not that clear estimates. Contribute to a real goal, basically.
Okay. A question from Steve. The models always look good, but how time and effort needs to go into maintaining the relationships between elements and the data? And is this really a viable way of managing strategy to implementation?
First of all, I agree with Steve that most typically good, also EA models, and I'm sure that was what Steve was referring to. But yeah, I agree that it takes time to maintain these models, and especially if you have put them in a repository, you save a bit of time because you're reusing the elements. But it takes time, and it's your organization if this is worth. So if in organizations where there is a big strategic change going on. For instance, in one of the banks that is a customer of ours, they're really at the time changing a lot in their business and trying to get rid of a bunch of legacy at the time. And they have no alternative than trying to manage that as a whole. And therefore they invest also in people that are maintaining these models and attempt to get insight both in the completeness of their strategy as well as their project portfolio. On the if you're a smaller organization and you have a more stable strategy changes, I can it's valuable, but yeah, it depends on if the investment then make up for what you get out of it. So you have not one answer, but the way of thinking is right. So it depends on the complexity if the investment in these models and the maintenance of these models is worth it.
Thank you, Remco. He said he would be great for advice on how to balance the formality of TOGAF and multiple levels of strategic planning with a more agile funding and delivery approach. And he says, for example, less upfront analysis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is contradictory. If you do less upfront analysis, you typically do less architecture. So architecture is about risk mitigation and upfront analysis. And if you do it, so you want to do agile and you want to do rapid delivery and continuous improvement and maybe even continuous delivery, the need for architecture is still there, but it's more done in the role of a programmer, for instance, in an agile development team. So it shifts from doing a lot of pre-project work towards more work in the project, on integration, on standardization, on reuse, also on documentation, which is somewhat challenging typically in agile environments. So I see that the role is changing, but the approach is totally different. So TOGAF says do a lot of upfront work of architecture before you even create a portfolio, where agile approaches typically just start off and then work from there. It is challenging, but I see that you apply TOGAF as a toolbox, so you use elements out of it, and not really applying the ADM, but use elements out of especially part number 3 on the guidelines and techniques in the TOGAF specification. You typically apply them in an agile environment as well, but more loosely and more as a toolbox rather than as a strict method.
Remco, we've had a number of questions about entering data into Archimate. How is the data getting into Archimate? Is it simply a manual process? Can you just explain a little bit more about how data is originally put into Archimate and the Twitch was discussing?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to emphasize the difference between Archimate, the open standard modeling language of the Open Group, which is concepts and relations. And I would like to distinguish that from our tool, which is BizDesign Architect. The question was about Architect, so how can we enter data in Architect? I said you can model, typically that in and import elements from lists. And also how we import all sorts of aspects of projects. So typical architects are not maintaining the attributes of projects. This is done in some sort of portfolio tool. Sometimes it's done in Excel. And then we have a procedure to import that every week, every 4 weeks or every month, depending on the governance structure of these portfolio tools. There are also customers that do all in a tool. So they do modeling, enterprise architecture, as well as portfolio management in the same environment, and the different users have different roles, so they see different views of the same repository. So that also be done. So it all depends. The architecture of our tool is really open. Anything that can take lists or is XML, XMI based can be coupled and be connected. And in some cases, we have out-of-the-box interfaces with some CMDBs as well as with some project management tools.
Okay, thank you. I'm aware that we've 10 minutes over the hour, so I think we better make this the last question, Remco. Last question for Yves. What viewpoints do you make for top/middle management?
To your organization. So I don't have one answer to it. In Archimate, we have three types of viewpoints. We have these points for architects and designers. We have decision-making viewpoints for portfolio managers. And the stakeholder group Yvette referring to is that group. And the first viewpoint type is that of informing views, where we have cartoons and freestyle, free format pictures that we get from the repository with different patient characteristics. That the middle group, the decision-making views are typical for management, also for line of business management. They have less boxes and lines, given in the coherence rather than in the construction. So it would be my advice to ask them what they want. Probably they say, I don't know, and start presenting some examples of views in which you present the coherence rather than the construction of your architecture. If you present goals they are aware of and that they chose themselves, the views to present will be way more accepted. It's also a tip.
Right, okay, well I think this would be a good time to bring today's event to a close. Do you have any final points you'd like to make, Remco?
No, thank you, and I would like to thank the Open Group for this opportunity, and I wish everybody a very nice Christmas and holidays. And feel free to contact me over email, via LinkedIn or via Twitter. Thanks much.
That's great. Many, many thanks everyone, and hopefully we'll catch up with you all in the new year on another webinar from the Open Group. So thank you very much everyone.